Paul, do you ever have doubts about or disrobing?
Never wanted to disrobe. I tried to contemplate disrobing, as a possibility, but I never. Not because I wanted to disrobe, was there something better to do than this? And so I tried to imagine all kind of possibilities of, suddenly I inherit $1 billion or meet a wealthy heiress, or become, famous, or have everything, all thinking all the best, ideas of just fantasies. But even that, I really appreciate this life. I think to me, this is the best you can get as a human being. And because you're like here, you can live in a society, and you're not rejecting society, and you're dependent on it. You need the society to support of it, but you're not contributing to its foolishness or its corruption or its dark side. And that's a real, that's the best you can do in this human realm. Like living in England, I felt I was living, I wasn't contributing, I wasn't reinforcing all the dark side of that society. I didn't even, but I was there. And then your monasteries open, people can come and hear Dhamma and practice things like this. So you're actually giving opportunities for people to benefit. And all you're asking, is necessary is like 1 meal a day, shelter for the night. So we're not asking for big salaries. And I remember at Chichester years ago when we first moved there, English woman, was a nurse, came to see me, and she was very aggressive, and she said, "You expect to just sit here and we come and feed you, and what do you do for the society?" And she was going on like that, really rude. And so I said, "Well, if I was an Anglican vicar, Christian priest, for what I do, I could demand, like £30,000 a year." No, I'm not asking for anything. So all you have to do is just drop you don't even have to do that. Drop a lump of rice in the bowl. Carrot?
Well, Paul, I wanted to ask kind of in relation to that relationship between monks and society, I was wondering what you thought of more socially engaged Buddhism or socially engaged monks who get involved with environmentalist actions or like human rights or other kind of more politically or socially activist movements. What you thought of monks who do that?
I mean, those are very good, they're usually involved in good causes. But to me, in England I had to figure out because I became such a popular figure there in the beginning that I became president of the Buddhist Society, and people invited me all over the place and giving meditation retreats, and I kind of just spread myself out where I was hardly at the monastery. And then I began to see that, I just think, what can I do that lay Buddhists couldn't do? What is my particular, how can I benefit this society that, say, a lay teacher, a lay meditation teacher couldn't do? And I can establish a monastery. And I became upachaya, and I could ordain monks, and I could set up monastic discipline and vinaya and training programs and that for people interested in that, and lay people can't do that. So then I began to see that, and then there was a lot of this engaged thing going on, especially in the 80s, and with the nuclear threats, in Britain was very much, there's a lot of paranoia there, because the Americans were arming Britain with cruise missiles, and there was a lot of protests, anti-war movements, and all kinds of good causes, that one felt sympathetic with. But I decided just to, rather than get caught out in all these other things, I'd have to concentrate just on what I know how to do. There was plenty of other people doing the other things, so I started stepping back from all these other engagements and just because I could, I realized I was just out of good intentions, just doing too much and burning out. And then I could see, thinking, well, these are good causes, I should support it, and because of the kind of grand gestures that I have, wanting to help and support worthy things. But then this is where your reflective mind, helps you to kind of observe what, just one physical being, you only have so much energy, and what is it that I can do is teach monks, and I established this nuns order. I was very interested in trying to provide good facilities for women, and so I did a lot of things to try to bring the Dhamma to people, but at the end of the day, I realized I became more kind of Wat Pong. Just like this was enough. This is what I could offer, and I, because all my experiments with other things were not going very well. So I became very conservative monk in England. But, like Ajahn Paisan, he's very active in the engagement here. I know him, and I respect what he's doing. And he knows how to practice. I have no judgment against it. I have no opinion about it, really. But I don't particularly, I like that of not being taking sides on politics and social issues, political issues, because like our position in society is one of a moral pointing, encouraging sila, dana sila, rather than taking sides on political groups. And on a personal level, you sympathize with one and don't, and so emotionally you have your preferences, but your role in the society is not a political one, not taking sides, but giving opportunity for both sides to listen to Dhamma, to take the sila and things like that. And so that's what so much is missing in, like, say, in other countries. They don't have that level, that kind of center point to refer to. It's usually you take sides on political issues and human rights issues and moral issues and ideals, and then you tend to argue and these things and that. But the Buddha established this middle way in order to allow to encourage the respect for dana sila from whoever is interested, from whatever level or left or right side of the political spectrum, whether they're beggars or kings or whatever. And in Thailand, they don't. In Sri Lanka, isn't it? Monks are members of parliament, things like that. They have strong political views. But I've noticed in Thailand, when a monk gets into that, it gets very, doesn't last very long.
The political assassinations of monks in Sri Lanka, too, Kapampa.
Really?
Yeah.
These active ones, the political?
Yes, yeah. Protests and assassinations, yeah. Comes with the job.
And then the ones in Burma that are anti-Muslim.
Yeah.
That's morally not right. Telling people to kill Muslims. But that's a moral issue, not a political one. And then here in Thailand you hear people saying, well, the religion is, like now in the news, newspapers, Thai newspapers, they're always, headlines about some monk that's corrupt and scandals and that. So it gives this impression that that the religion is corrupted. And Luang Por Chah made it very clear. He said, no, Buddhism can't be corrupted. People corrupt. People get corrupted, but not Dhamma. And it's true, you look at the Buddha's teaching, like the suttas, they're the same. They've never been corrupted for 2,556 years. There's all kinds of changes have taken place, in Buddhist countries and empires and kingdoms and flourish. Sometimes Buddhism flourishes and sometimes persecuted and disappears, but actually the essential teaching has never been corrupted. But individual monks can be corrupted, but not the teaching.
Chato has the theory of a conspiracy of old monks against women who change the Dhamma.
Yeah, because there's like the Western mentality is one of believing in progress as a reality. So like the American mind tends to think that we're here to make everything advance and progress and better than what it is. And so this is, and then it's easy in the States to assume that, well, Buddhism is an old religion appropriate for ancient India or maybe for Asian countries. But when it comes to America, we've got to Americanize it and make it progressive, and so it fits into the social values and the culture of Americans, make it an American type of Buddhism. Or in Britain, the British Buddhism is, we're not that Thai stuff, we're going to really, make it ours. And I've heard that, and there's some movements in Britain, that are doing that, new forms in British Buddhism and American Buddhism and things like that. But like I trained here in Thailand in tradition, and a tradition is something that comes from we assume that it comes from the Buddha 2,500 years ago in India. And so it's set up, like you said, the Dhamma, the Vinaya, and the Sangha. So, and that traditional form that's managed to survive. And when you look at it, it's really, quite miraculous to think that you actually have an ancient tradition from ancient India still working well within, like Britain or America, where it's never really, before this, there was not much knowledge or understanding or interest in Buddhism in the Christian Western world. So, and now there is, and then establishing these monasteries like in England and so forth, they work, they don't have to really do a lot to make them work within the social values and structure of modern life. But the mentality of the West is still this belief that somehow we're advanced and we've got to make these old things up to date, and that's a conceit that we have. I can see it myself, it's a conceit that we've got to make it more agreeable, more Western, more American than it is. But I think the value, like in England, of keeping to a traditional form is that it's not going to become popular, masses of people, but it's going to be available to people interested, in this kind of living within an ancient tradition and practicing meditation. So you don't need, I don't want to change it. So you have to adapt to contingencies like weather and that, so you can't survive very long like this. But that's fair enough. But generally speaking, it works very well. I never really had difficulties from the society there. And so that's why I trust it, because I put it to the test. I didn't know what was going to happen when I went to live in England. Whether there'd be any interest, or I'd starve to death, or people would throw rocks at me, or put me in a mental institution. I was open to anything. but it's a nice country, it has a sense of fairness, and it wants to do the right thing, and so and it's very tolerant towards religion. And you read about English history, they've gone through, persecuting. There's places in London that they have marked where people were beheaded or killed, drawn and quartered for public observation, hanged, public hangings. And if you were a heretic or a Catholic, when it became Protestant, then they'd hang Catholics This was only a few hundred years ago. And now, you can't do that. You can't hang Catholics or Buddhists. In fact, they're incredibly tolerant towards it all. Well, that's progress, you know. But if we were just about Indian culture, then you could see it wouldn't. But it's about truth, you know, suffering, about dukkha and its causes and how to deal with it. You know, so it applies to to anyone, whether, you know, it's not about, you know, a cultural, specific to a culture. It's about a universal reality that we share. Because suffering is, everybody can relate to that. Because, that's what we experience. Whether, it's Europe, Asia, wherever. And then in a country like affluent Western Europe or America, you have a high standard of living and good governments and good economies and things like this, but still people suffer. So I mean, you can't blame your suffering on the poverty or tyrannical governments and things like this, but even, the wealthy people suffer terribly. And here in Thailand, I meet a lot of very wealthy people, and they've got all kinds of suffering problems. And yeah, they've got the money to get anything they want and travel and things. Thailand's a nice country to live in, but you can still create misery in your mind about it. And that's where this reflective kind of ability, where because the suffering is common to us all, whether it's the king of Thailand or beggar or, male or female or, whatever race or nationality, class, there's this dukkha, and it should be understood. So being wealthy is not the solution. Sometimes you have more dukkha because you're so attached to it. And if you don't have much money and you become a monk, it's easier than if you have a lot of money and you have to give it up.
Your standard of living can actually improve, Lumpar. Why don't you ordain here?
Well, that was what I discovered at Wat Pah Pong, was because I'm from, like a middle class family, and in America, so you're born into this level of, and it would be considered luxurious for us, for monks, but you just take it for granted because that's what you know and what you assume is normal. And like my parents were always very careful about, the food we had and 3 meals a day, and we had a nice house, and everything was, this is what you expected to get in life. And then when I went to Wat Pah Pong, it was sleeping on a mat on the bare floor, and 1 meal a day, and there was no electricity, no refrigeration, nothing, just basic, very primitive conditions. But, I realized how little I needed. You know, I didn't need all that electricity and the things that I, you know, felt I needed to survive. And it was a relief to know that how little you really need. But the mind, you see, is the thing that if you develop the mind, the mind, then it doesn't matter so much about the external things. Whether if you're rich or poor is not really important anymore.
Okay. What do you think the sort of the future or the situation with Buddhism in the West? Like, I've only really seen it in Australia, where most of the lay people who were coming to the temple, they weren't really interested in, you know, past future lives or, you know, getting out of samsara. They were more interested in just like, you know, meditating to get happiness, like right now in this life. And now, you know, any time a teacher sort of talked about, like, you know, too deep into this, or the suffering of samsara, or, you know, even Four Noble Truths, people seem to have a bit of aversion to even hearing that. It always seems to be like just for feeling happy. But I don't know. I always thought that was a bit of a, like, you know, the shell of Buddhism might have gone, but the essence isn't yet actually. What's your opinion on it?
You know, people are, you know, come for different reasons. And this comes, you know, want a peaceful mind or you know, calm down. His life is very stressful now for most people, and so you know, you get a lot of stress problems. People, you know, just so busy and constantly caught into the rat race, and it's, you know, things move faster now than before, you know, with all the modern technology, and the result is a lot more tension. And then there's the social problems of, you know, the economy. Everybody, you know, where it's very materialistic. You know, like we're looked at as consumers now. They talk about it as consumers, like we're no longer citizens. We just, you know, like big mouths consuming. It's not an insulting way to talk about it. To me, it's downright insulting. Like, see, you know, when you think of a citizen, you think of a human being in a more kind of honorable way of addressing the human individuals and consumers. See, if I see just consumers, changes my relationship to
the revenue.
Yeah, how much, you know, you got to pay your taxes. And so it is very, you know, that's why religion now is like in Britain, it's not persecuted because it's not important anymore. Your spiritual life is just not an issue. It's about, you know, your rights and paying taxes and financing the government, making the economy work, and for modern economies, you got to make people desire things. You got to create desire in their minds. So you know, everything, the advertisements and everything is designed to make you want, never to be content with what you have, but they're always offering a newer and better thing and they condition you to want the new, the best, and the newest, and the improved. And it's ongoing, isn't it? You know, just you know, because you can, you know, that's what they stimulate the economy with, is desire, keeping people greedy and discontented with what they have. So that's what modern, you know, free market capitalism does. It just makes you discontented. and envious. You know, you're trying to make people think, well, the neighbors, they got the latest model and it looks better than mine is last year's. It creates envy, you know. You want to keep up with the Joneses. That's the world. That's the society we're living in, based on stimulating desire. And this life is about contentment with little. You know, so it's really a contrast to, especially to modern societies, where they don't want you to be content with last year's fashion. So, you know, they deliberately create a new fashion which they promote as better than last year's. You know, so it's all these advertisements, and you know, it's a psychology too. They get psychologists to figure out how you can make people want things they don't really need. How you can keep stirring up their mind, making them greedy. So, I mean, this is the society we're living in, you know, and it's just to recognize that that's the social milieu that we're living in, and it's not based on religious belief anymore. You can believe anything you want. No, you can believe and disbelieve. You can say, and be an atheist. And it's very respectable to be an atheist in Britain, you know, and then you can deny God and things like this. And so you can curse God, you can make fun of the Queen, and Prince Charles, you know, poor guy, they love to criticize him and make fun of him and everything he does. You know, he's always, you know, the paparazzi are always trying to get him in embarrassing poses or something to make fun of him. You can't do that in Thailand. It's against the law. But in England, it's fair game. So I used to think some of the things they used to say about Prince Charles, he should come complain to some human rights organization. Because he's a nice person, you know. He's not somebody to despise, but he is, you know, high up in the royal family, but be the future king. But still, you know, the society is a profane one. It's not about respect or that kind of, you know, respecting elders, or it's not about you know, being glad or mudita as a sense of being glad at someone's success or position. It's about, you know, he thinks he's better than me. Let's knock him down. You know, he's up on a pedestal. Let's destroy the pedestal. Watch him fall on his butt. You know, it's fair game now. And so, you know, that's where this tradition is, it helps us to get into some kind of relationship to structure and hierarchy. And because, you know, like the American mind, we're brought up to think hierarchy is wrong and patriarchy is something evil. You know, like the feminists in England use the word patriarchy as if it's vile, like satanic, you know. And in fact, some of our nuns were using it one time, and so I gave a talk. I said, look, you know, patriarchy, it can be good, it can be bad. It's not in itself, it's just, you know, a word. And you can have a patriarch that's good, or you have one that isn't. So it's just, you know, this kind of way we use language to create prejudices against groups or abuse, find fault with others is rampant. Always trying to find ways of criticizing, especially the people that are in prominent positions. And that creates, this sense of, the idea that we're all the same, all equal, is an ideal. But actually, sankhara, the level of sankhara is always about difference, not about sameness. So if you're all, every sankharas are changing and they're not equal. Like is big equal to small, something like this, or the only thing they have in common is that they're impermanent conditions. And small is impermanent, big is impermanent. And this is what the Buddha is emphasizing, that conditioned phenomena is like this, it's changing. And that means that there's no permanent goodness or badness or evil or whatever. These are concepts we have to describe something in the, that we, maybe it can be evil in the present moment, but it's not permanent. Evil changes, it's like goodness. And so this is where the wisdom, the panya faculty starts informing us how to live this life. So the structure, say, monastic church based on a seniority of, who ordains first, not on personal preferences or social position or, even like an arhat, it still bows to the senior monk, even though the senior monk may not be one, because that's the structure. And that makes our life workable. Otherwise, it's each one to his own. And then how could we live together if we just, we made up our own rules and did what we wanted? We couldn't live together. And this is why I think that like this traditional form has a point to it, because in England, for example, there's so many meditation groups and psychotherapy groups, and there's always this self-awareness and exploring yourself and improving yourself, and then there's all attempts to take Buddhism and make it modern and kind of psychotherapeutic and not use the Buddhist words anymore. You present Buddhist meditation but without the Pali words, without Buddha Dhamma Sangha or anything. So this is, so you can present, because it's based on the universal reality, you can present Dhamma in any form, as science, as psychology, as philosophy. It fits into every category, but it also fits into the religious one, the religion, and then there's like what we have is the religious form, and that means that we have the right to use these words, use Pali, use Buddhist terms, establish Vinaya, and that because we've committed ourselves to this traditional form, and then it offers like it's like a very sharp tool. If you use it rightly, it's like if you just changed it around, it would lose its sharpness. Become, and probably become quite useless. But if you keep to the, if you learn how to use it in the right way, it cuts through the delusion right away. And that's what I felt in England, where there's a lot of pressure on me to change things there, because people wanted, didn't like the structure of seniority or the relationship of nuns to monks, and there was always these kind of issues going on in a society where people are very much concerned with human rights and fairness and ideals and democracy and freedom and respect for individuals and so forth. So you have to deal with this high level of idealism, which is, it's to be respected, but it is ideal. It's based on ideal thinking, but it's not an understanding of how things are, you see. And that's what we lack, why our societies are just caught up in materialism, because we don't know how things are. We know how they should be. All of us could create a perfect society in our minds. Everything's fair, everything's equal, everybody's free. There's no rich or poor. You can create this, like the communists tried to do, this ideal political economic system. But it's an ideal. It doesn't. When like in the Soviet Union, when they tried to make it into communism, they used tyranny to do it. So they, you force, you've got to believe this, and if I have very good ideas, and I force them on you, you don't hear the brilliant ideas I'm forcing on you, you just feel my bullying, tyranny. So you can't. You can't even understand what I'm saying, because you're just feeling this anger and force compelling you to, without respect or understanding you in any way, just forcing my views down your throat. You're like one of these geese, where they stuff food down his throat to get this pate. And of course, like in basic, like in Thailand, the Tam Di Dai Di, Tam Chua Dai Chua, it's so basic, like every school child knows that. Do good, you receive good, do bad, you receive bad. Law of karma. And to get the proper end, you have to have the proper means. So the end doesn't justify the means in Buddhist terms. To wage war, to have a peace, is an impossibility. War for peace, kill the forces, axis of evil, and kill the devil, and annihilate the enemy, get rid of Saddam Hussein or whoever, but how are things really now? What is the nature of our life? And there's suffering common to all of us, and there's causes, and if you awaken to the suffering, then you see its presence and absence, and then you're beginning to understand the way things are, rather than be grasping high-minded ideas about how things should be. This we lack. We don't have this as a part of our training, education, culture. It's all about how things should be, and how we want them to be, and then we're always discontented with ourselves or with life, because we can never live up to these ideals. you just, personally, you can't do it. Because we're not ideals. We have to live with bodies like this, they feel everything. And we've got blood flowing through our veins, and we've got nerve endings, and, sensory activity, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, I only want to look at what is really beautiful, and so you're a wealthy person, so you build a special, beautiful house in a beautiful place with works of art, and everything is beautiful. And you have married a very beautiful woman, and you have beautiful children. But inevitably, it's going to change. How can you sustain that level of visual beauty? Your wife's going to get old and no longer beautiful. Your children might be beautiful when they're young, but they can be real bastards when they're older. and then you might be living in a beautiful place and suddenly an earthquake comes or a revolution takes place. Because this is the way things are. And all our attempts to build utopian situations, end up in disillusionment. And so is peace really what people want? Or they just want, they like the ideal of peace, or the ideal of democracy, or that, these are beautiful ideals, but the reality is we have to learn how to relate to the unpeacefulness of the samsara, of the conditions changing. But instead of just trying to deny it or change it, where a relationship is observing, because then we're behind it all. We're actually witnessing it with wisdom rather than just trying to get rid of the sankharas. Because you'll never succeed at that. You've got a human body. It gets cold, gets hot, tired, gets old, sick. You've got to feed it. It's got different functions. They're anything but peaceful, and learning how to live with it is not through. It's not suicide. It's against the Vinaya. So.
Not only if it fails.
The thing is, you don't get punished. Or maybe afterwards. but it's not about the body anymore, about the conditioned phenomena, but it's knowing it for what it is. This is what's possible for us as human beings, to be able to do this. And that's what's so wonderful about it, is that my personal personality is one that always tends to be a bit on the negative side. You can't do it, or seeing things in terms of some kind of value judgment. But then the experience of training in this tradition is that it actually works, and you can. It's not asking the impossible from any of us. And it's based on something ordinary rather than on some special skill that someone might have that you don't have. Like, some kind of ability to concentrate the mind and live in a deva realm or something. But this is about suffering in this realm, because this realm, the human form, is a suffering vehicle. It's all about change, old age, sickness, death, loss. We have to experience grief, loss of loved ones, seeing our parents get old and die, and disappointment, because life isn't going to be all that accommodating to our desires for happiness. So this realm is a realm of dukkha, but not in a negative way. It's not like a put down. It's a understanding of it, and that's where the brilliance of the Buddha was pointing to that. Something extremely simple, obvious, in your face, that oftentimes never really admitted or understood, because we can always run from it, look for happiness.
Well, what's your opinion on samsara being within the mind of the individual or also external? The Buddha attained Buddhahood and arahantship. It's like he's saying, in a sense, they're still here, but that sort of this is free from the suffering of samsara. That the mind is sort of pure and it's not actually in a state of suffering like that. It's that pointing at samsara.
Well, this is like, you can't, right now you're experiencing the world from where you are. So I'm actually in your mind at this and I come and go, don't I? So that you're with your mind all 24 hours of the day and night, and then that then we create the world, and that's like the ego sakyaditti silabhatta bharamasamicikita. We're creating a whole universe, realm, a conditioned attitude, and we create this out of avijja, ignorance of Dhamma. We don't know Dhamma, so we live in the world of our own creation. We think we share the same world. We assume that the world that we're living in is the same for all of us, but not really. Because right at this moment, I'm in your world, and the same thing, you're in my world at this moment, and so is Thailand, so is Ireland, and the sun and moon and stars, because this is what you can know. You're observing what you can actually know in a direct way, not from God's position, the knowing from the top, knowing everything about everything. And this is where you have to trust this knowing within the, you might conceive yourself as a speck in the universe, just a nobody, and if you drop dead right now, a few people might know about it, but the rest of the world, universe, wouldn't know, and wouldn't care. But you do, the world you're living in right now is your creation and what you're used to, and it's important to you. And so this is like, and then you're changing relationship to the world, to observing it rather than creating it. And that's what mindfulness is. It's sati sampajanya, and it is letting go of the world to observe it. And we all do this. We all create our own world. We all live in our own world, even though we assume that we're sharing the same world. And Ajahn Chah used to like to shock Western visitors when they come to Wat Pah Po, and I'd be translating for him, and he'd say something like, "Did you come here to see the end of the world?" And they, "What's he talking about?" And I'd translate that literally in English. Is he mad? What do you mean by that? End of the world. I came here to learn meditation and make the world better. And then he'd say the world ends here, and point to his heart, the world ends here. And well, that, for myself, I could contemplate that, there's a kind of, the literal understanding the end of the world means, the Armageddon or whatever. But in terms of, on a big scale, but in terms of it's happening all the time in the mind, the rising, ceasing, sukha, dukkha, and all the rest is going on, and we create, we're conditioned to think and create images and hold to ideals, and that's the world that we live in. And then now in the monastic life, you can create a world around monasticism and so forth, but the point is not to create, but to understand. And then it goes back to this simple reality of all conditions are impermanent. And then so that means everything, for your every thought, every desire, refined, coarse, true, false, good, bad, right or wrong, coarse, refined, distant, sun, moon, stars. But the world that we actually live and feel in is the one we create. And then we have our own views about the sun and moon and the stars, as well as, this person, that person, or whatever. They're conditioned, that through cultural conditioning to approve of this, disapprove of that. And then the mindfulness gives us perspective on both liking, disliking, as we experience it, not as some theory, but as just being observing of it. And that which observes is pure conscious awareness. It's universal. It's unitive. It's not personal anymore. It's what unites all creation, all these different animals and things in this vast, complicated world of nature and people and stars and so forth. Its consciousness embraces all of it. So and this is what we can actually recognize through discerning it. And we're not separate from it. It's just not noticed, not recognized. So that's the point of the power now, in the meditation, is to be able to recognize this ultimate reality within the limitations of the world you create, and your own personal loves and hates and feelings and physical, mental conditions.